My name is Douglas Brooks, and ARTJ 391, Japanese Traditional Boat Building Apprenticeship through Japan House at the University of Illinois. Yeah, I am a boat builder, writer, researcher, and teacher, and my specialty is traditional wooden boats with a particular focus on traditional Japanese boats. I'm from a small town in Connecticut and built my first boat while I was in college at Mystic Seaport Museum in Mystic, Connecticut. By happenstance, while I was an exchange student at the University of Oregon, my roommate was from Japan, and he eventually invited me to visit his native country, and that's what really started this whole journey for me into Japanese boat building. I graduated from Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut with a degree in philosophy. Some years later, I wound up working at the Maritime Museum in San Francisco, where I became the museum boat builder. And it was after that tenure that I went to Japan. So I went to Japan understanding issues around preserving traditional crafts, teaching traditional crafts, curating historic boats, and so on. And on that first trip, I met several boat builders who had amazing stories to tell. And eventually one of those first boat builders I met became my first teacher in Japan. I have since 1996, the year of that first apprenticeship, I have in total had apprenticeships with 9 Japanese boat builders, all craftspeople in their 70s and 80s when I worked with them, and I'm the sole apprentice for 7 of my 9 teachers. The apprentice system is a one-to-one direct transmission between the master and the apprentice. And in fact, in Japanese crafts, there's a great deal of secrecy embedded in that tradition. The tragedy is that once you lose a generation of apprentices, you lose the whole thing. So Japan House, Diana reached out to me, apparently following a visit to the Anderson Japanese Garden in Rockford, Illinois, where one of my boats is located. I've built boats for 4 Japanese gardens, 3 in the United States and 1 in Japan. And I'm very, very eager to work with this program. It sounds wonderful. I've never been to Champaign-Urbana, but I'm really looking forward to it. And everybody at Japan House has just been amazing in the lead up to this. But I see a real yearning among young people to work with their hands. And that is incredibly gratifying to me, because I think there was a period in between my generation and students' generation that really turned away from traditional handwork and embraced new technologies. And now I think there really is a yearning to find out what can one do working with their hands. But the other thing about the learning itself is a lot of the learning that I'm trying to communicate stands on its head what students are used to. And in broad brushstrokes, I feel like the Japanese apprenticeship puts in the entire onus for learning upon the student. In other words, the master takes no responsibility for the student's performance and really does not teach. But the student is required to learn. And I think young people today, many generations in our culture today, went through a learning process that was really the opposite of that, where we sat passively and listened to a professor, a teacher, and that teacher was always there to save us. And this couldn't be further from the reality of being an apprentice in Japan. So I won't say any more than that, because it's a big, big, big topic. So like at the University of Illinois, what I'm trying to expose to a group of university students, probably none of whom will continue to become boat builders. I'm not, in my own mind, I'm not so much teaching boat building as I want my class to be about Japanese apprentice pedagogy. And so I want to introduce students to another way of learning. And it's how I was taught by my teachers. And it really took me many years to kind of fully absorb the lessons of it, but I really think it's a very, very powerful mode of learning. And so that, in my mind, I mean, my students are always very excited about building a boat, and good for them. But in my mind, I'm trying to expose them to a different way of learning. And I that's all I ask, is that they be open to that. Yeah, so my first apprenticeship in Japan was pretty interesting because, as I mentioned, I met in my early trips there, I was meeting boat builders and I was yearning to work with one of them. And the first boat builder to step forward to invite me to be his apprentice built an iconic and very well-known boat throughout Japan, but it's a barrel. It is literally a barrel that people take to sea and fish from. And it was kind of funny to go through the effort to study with him and do this, and yet come away thinking, yeah, great. I went to Japan to be a boat builder, and I became a barrel maker. It really lit a fire under me. I was desperate to find another teacher and build, quote, a regular boat. And so I did succeed in doing that. But again, you know, that first boat has always, for me, been a favorite, just because it is so quirky and so strange, and so unique. And actually, ironically, I'm quite well known now among barrel makers in Japan, because my first book is the only published work on Japanese barrel making. And there are fewer barrel makers than boat builders, so it's an even smaller cohort of craftspeople. But I've stopped being embarrassed by it. It's really one of my favorite boats. So.